It's the end of the long month of fasting for Muslims around the world today, but Ethiopian Muslims are not celebrating this Eid. Instead, they've been on the streets demonstrating against what they're calling interference in religious affairs. There have been several Muslim protests in the country over the past year, and tensions are running high. These men took part in the demonstrations this morning.
After prayer was good. But after that, there was trouble because people began protesting. It was around the ETV2 channel by the stadium that there were clashes and some people got hit on the legs. One sister hurt her arm and there were arrests. Our mother kept falling down and crying. We didn't do anything wrong. We only asked for the prisoners to be let free. We can't get our voices heard. It's because they don't want to listen to us that they are beating us. We can only solve religious issues with religious solutions, not by beating people up.
We haven't been able to worship freely. There is a stop and search policy everywhere. They don't want us to protest. There is a new religion called Ahbash, and we are being forced to follow it. They are dismissing imams in our mosque and replacing them with their own imams. You see, previously, some mosques had been closed because they objected to the teachings. And because of that, the Muslim community came together and formed a committee. And then the government put those committee members in prison. They have been in prison for over a year now. So what we are asking the government is to stop imposing a new religion on us and pressurizing us.
Muslims were beaten for no reason. We are not throwing stones or anything, only shouting Allahu Akbar and asking for the prisoners to be released. And they beat people.
Ethiopian protesters there. Now, Muslims make up between 33 and 40% of Ethiopia's population, and the vast majority follow the moderate Sufi version of Islam. Matthew Newsom is a reporter based in Addis Ababa, and he told me his impressions of today's protests.
Hundreds of Muslim protesters came out onto the streets early this morning to commemorate their Eid holiday by demonstrating against the government and calling upon the government to release their religious leaders. 28 religious leaders have been arrested in the last year, and they're demanding that the government stop their repressive tactics and stop interfering with their community and their religious gatherings.
So are things quite bad between the Muslim community and the government?
Yeah, the government for the last 2 years have been trying to involve themselves through a moderate form of Islam which it's created called Al-Habash. And they've done this out of fear that there are extremist elements in the Muslim community in Ethiopia. And in reaction to this, the Muslim community have been staging regular protests and demonstrations throughout the country in different towns. And this usually ends in a lot of violence, a lot of arrests. And quite recently, this weekend, there were 14 people shot dead following one of the demonstrations against the government.
And what happened at today's protests? What did the authorities do? Was there any police presence?
Throughout the city today in Addis, there's a massive police presence. There are trucks with hundreds of federal police roaming around. The protesters I spoke to felt very intimidated, very persecuted, and were very unhappy that they couldn't celebrate Eid with privacy. They felt that the government and the police were being much too violent. I saw a number of protesters being arrested, and the police they're being quite heavy-handed, mostly towards the people who are handing out leaflets and pamphlets and chanting slogans demanding the release of their religious leaders.
And so what's the mood now? You say that there are lots of police out on the street. Are people sort of cowed and intimidated?
There is talk that there's going to be another mass. What they've been doing today is that they've been staging mass prayer protests where they gather in their hundreds in different locations around the city and they pray, and after their prayers they start chanting slogans and asking the government to end their repressive tactics and to stop interfering with their community and their religious affairs. So the mood is quite tense due to the military and the police presence, which is very, very forceful at the moment. You can't go anywhere without seeing a truckload of police at the moment.
Just